The night she said she had nowhere else to go felt heavier than rain, heavier than the years I had spent learning how to mind my own business. It felt like the kind of moment that splits a life cleanly in two, the kind you recognize only after it has already passed. The streetlight flickered above us in a quiet corner of a small town in Ohio, and the cold pressed against our bones as if it wanted to hear the answer before she did. I did not know then that a single sentence, spoken with a trembling voice and answered with a choice instead of logic, would rewrite both our futures. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one small decision can change everything, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this exist because people still believe that compassion matters. Her name was Grace Harper, and she looked like someone who had been holding herself together with sheer willpower for far too long. Her coat was too thin for winter, her hands red from the cold, her eyes tired in a way that sleep could never fix. I was Matthew Collins, a 34-year-old mechanic who lived alone in a modest rental house on the edge of town, still paying off regrets I never talked about. We knew each other only because life had a strange habit of putting the same broken people in the same places. I had fixed her old car twice without charging her, not because I was generous, but because something about her quiet gratitude made me feel like I was repairing more than an engine. Grace had grown up in foster homes scattered across Indiana and Ohio, learning early that nothing stayed and no one promised forever. By the time she was 19, she had aged out of the system with a trash bag of clothes and a belief that independence meant survival, not happiness. She worked diner shifts, cleaned offices at night, and slept wherever she could afford. When she met Andrew, she thought stability had finally chosen her. What she got instead was control disguised as care, isolation mistaken for love, and a slow erosion of self-worth that left her apologizing for existing. When she finally walked away, she had nothing left to walk toward. That night outside the closed grocery store, Grace was carrying everything she owned in a backpack that looked too heavy for her shoulders. She did not cry. She simply stood there, eyes fixed on the pavement, as if saying the words aloud might cause the last thread holding her upright to snap. I remember feeling fear rise in me, not of her, but of the responsibility her honesty placed in my hands. Letting someone into your life when you are still learning how to live your own can feel like standing at the edge of a cliff and choosing to step forward anyway. I told myself 100 reasons why it was a bad idea. I was not rich. I was not healed. I was not looking to play savior. But something louder than fear spoke up, something that sounded like the voice I used to have before disappointment taught me caution. I had lost my younger brother, Joshua, to an overdose 3 years earlier, after I ignored too many signs because getting involved felt inconvenient. Since then, I had lived with the quiet ache of knowing what indifference can cost. Looking at Grace, I felt that ache stir, demanding to be useful for once. My house was nothing special, just 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, and walls that still smelled faintly of motor oil and old paint. The spare room had become a storage space for forgotten projects and unopened boxes from a life I never quite unpacked. When Grace stepped inside later that night, the silence was thick with uncertainty. She sat on the edge of the couch like a guest afraid of overstaying her welcome, hands folded, eyes scanning for rules she might accidentally break. I gave her clean towels, a warm meal, and the promise that she could rest without explaining herself. That promise, more than the roof, seemed to undo her. The first weeks were awkward in the way new lives learning to coexist always are. Grace woke early and cleaned as if earning her right to stay, scrubbing already clean counters, folding laundry that was not hers. She flinched at sudden noises, apologized too often, and slept lightly, as though expecting the floor to disappear beneath her. I worked long hours at the garage in Toledo, coming home tired but strangely steadied by the presence of another human being breathing in the next room. We talked about ordinary things at first, weather, work, the small-town rhythms that fill space when deeper truths are still too fragile. Slowly, stories emerged, not all at once, but in fragments, like pieces of a puzzle she was not sure I deserved to see. She told me about moving through childhood like a visitor everywhere, about learning to pack quickly and hope quietly. I told her about Joshua, about the night the phone rang and my life cracked open. We did not offer solutions. We listened. In that listening, something began to mend. Grace found a job at a local bookstore, a place that smelled of paper and possibility. She started bringing home novels and leaving them open on the coffee table, as if marking her territory with hope. She laughed more, a sound that surprised her every time it escaped. I noticed how she stood taller, how her eyes lifted to meet mine without fear. Healing did not arrive like a sunrise. It came like a slow thaw, barely noticeable until one day you realized the ice was gone. Not everything was easy. There were nights when Grace woke from nightmares, sitting rigid on the bed, breath shallow, eyes distant. There were days when my own temper, sharpened by exhaustion, threatened the fragile peace we had built. We learned to navigate those moments with patience, to give each other space without withdrawing care. Trust, we discovered, is not a feeling. It is a series of choices made over and over, especially when it is inconvenient. Months passed, and the house changed. The spare room became Grace's room, then simply her room. Pictures appeared on the walls. Plants took over the windowsills. Laughter filled spaces that once echoed. We celebrated small victories, her first saved paycheck, my decision to enroll in night classes to finally get certified as a master mechanic. Neither of us said it aloud, but we both felt it. We were no longer just surviving. We were building something. Grace eventually told me that night outside the grocery store had been her last plan. She had been so tired of being invisible that she was ready to disappear entirely. Hearing that settled heavily in my chest, a reminder of how close we had come to losing everything before it began. I realized then that kindness is not about grand gestures. It is about showing up when someone is standing at the edge and offering solid ground. As the seasons turned, our connection deepened into something steady and quiet, the kind of love that grows from shared mornings and honest exhaustion. We did not rush it. We let it be what it was, rooted in respect and gratitude. Grace enrolled in community college, studying social work because she wanted to become the person she once needed. Watching her walk across campus on her first day, backpack slung confidently over her shoulder, felt like witnessing a miracle that had required no magic, only consistency. If this story is reaching something tender inside you, if it reminds you of a time when someone opened a door for you or when you wish you had done the same for someone else, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement helps stories of hope travel further than despair ever could. Years later, on a quiet evening in the same Ohio town, Grace and I stood in the kitchen cooking dinner, the windows fogged with warmth, the air rich with the scent of home. The memory of that cold night no longer hurt the way it once did, but it remained with us as a compass, pointing always toward compassion. We understood now that the question she had asked was never really about a place to sleep. It was about whether she mattered enough for someone to choose her without obligation. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. Please leave a comment sharing whether you believe one act of kindness can truly change a life, or if you have experienced a moment like this yourself. The truth is, I did not save Grace, and she did not save me. We met each other at the right moment and chose not to look away. In a world that often teaches us to protect our own space at all costs, we dared to make room. And in that room, we found not just shelter, but a future neither of us could have imagined alone.